Hey, this is Azbolg, the Gaming Orc. I'm going to talk to you guys about some of the Azerite changes that have happened on September 17th here. I'm going to talk about just some of the general ones, and then I'm going to just talk about the warlock ones. And because I don't play a lot of the other classes, so I don't really want to comment on if they're nerfs or buffs, feel free to check out the changes yourself here or on MMOChampion.com. First of all, you had like in these Azerite traits, I'm going to just show you a quick chart here of why some of these traits were nerfed, but let's talk about some of the nerfs on some of them and the buffs. Archive of the Titans was a Azerite trait that you could pick up from Uldar. Your primary stat bonus is increased by 20%. That's one where if you're fighting in combat, as the fight goes on, your stacks go up much higher, so it's actually really good for PvE, I think, especially if you're a tank and keep pulling in like a Mythic Plus, but definitely good in Uldar. And you get an additional bonus reorigination array within Uldar, which is another little added bonus while you're in that dungeon. The two biggies, though, that were the general ones that need to be nerfed were Laser Matrix and Thunderous Blast. Laser Matrix, damage reduced by 30%. And Thunderous Blast, damage reduced by 35%. And I'm going to show you why they made these nerfs in this particular chart. So here's another website I like to use for warlocks in particular. It's called lockonestopshop.com. Let's take a look at Affliction, because those are the ones where kind of the nerfs have happened the most in this particular balance pass. If I go to Sims, Sims Azerite. So like characters sim their data to figure out which is the best one, and you can tell like these are some general ones, but if you scroll down, these ones are the most modern ones here. Just take a look at the bar chart. So really, like you see here, you have Laser Matrix and a Thunderous Blast way up on top here, and then you have all the other classes really that are much lower. Inevitable Demise and so forth are all much lower, and these might have looks like this was simmed actually on the 18th today, so this is up to date. I don't know what plus 10 means or plus 5. I guess it's if you get maybe a mythic plus 10 or plus 5 item. So what I was using with my warlock was 3 sets of sudden onset, and if I didn't pick those up, I would pick up like Thunderous Blast was really powerful, Laser Matrix was really powerful. Let's go back to the nerfs a little bit. So Thunderous Blast and Laser Matrix were both nerfed. If I go back here, you can see why, because like Laser Matrix, even after the sim data, is really far on up here. You know, the bars are really skewed. And if they were more balanced, like if Blizzard, the whole point behind this is that you should make the freedom for players to kind of choose really unique builds instead of just going into like, oh, Thunderous Blast is like so far ahead of the pack on all these, I need to go into them. Inevitable Demise, let's go down to the warlock ones, and Inevitable Demise, the ones PvP spec and so forth they even built, but even for PvE it was very strong. It was nerfed by 30%. Huge nerf to sudden onset. So I had 3 pieces of that. It's still the way this guy has simmed it is still powerful. It's below dagger, and it's actually a high. It's still one of the top traits, but it's more in line with some of the other ones. And because part of the reason why is guilds like Mythic apparently go to like the second to last boss or whatever with 4 or 5 Affliction Warlocks, because they can like custom tailor the raid, because they have so many classes and specs that they can manipulate raid encounters with to do mythic content. It actually, in my opinion, ruins the game for everyone. So, but because they're much better at finding these sort of like what I want to call hacks. I don't want to call them hacks, but really exploit. Not even an exploit, but OP things like sudden onset. But you have to keep in mind they buffed sudden onset, and now they nerfed it. So you have to question, like, does Blizzard really know what the hell they're doing? And this is what pissed me off originally in Legion when they made those huge PvP changes, which I love, by the way. So, you know, right now in the World Championship arena, you have the people with the tank trinkets. And whenever you start nerfing damage, you make healing more powerful. And so people have like 60% dampening in the Arena World Championship. I mean, so that goes to show you something is off, at least in the PvP aspect of things. Demonology, Demonic Meteor. Hand of Gul'dan deals an additional 62 damage and has a 5% chance per soul shard spent to refunding a soul shard. Let's take a look, see what they've done with that. We can go back to Demonology and see how that sims, because the guy apparently simmed it today or this morning. I go to gearing, no, Sims, I'm sorry. Sims, Azerite. I love this site for warlocks, at least. It's amazing. It's loading in the data. So Thunderous Blast, which talent did they buff here? Let's see when they simmed it. Just so few people are playing Demonology. So, and because it's such a, it's not that good. And see, Archive of the Titans, even though it received that buff, it's still really low, at least for Demonology. Thunderous Blast is still way up there, even though it got a huge nerf. And I have to question a little bit of the sim data because I feel like the nerf probably even bumped this back even further. Let's go back here. Demonology is called Demonic Meteor. And it's not even close to the top, so I know for a fact that it's just not that good. Demonic Meteor is massively, it's near the bottom. So this is not the buff. I'm like Obi-Wan Kenobi right now. This is not the buff you're looking for. This is not the buff you're looking for. Demonology is in a world of hurt. It needs very unique traits, like Supreme Commander was actually pretty cool for Demonology. When your Demonic Tyrant expires, consume its life essence, granting you a stack of Demonic Core, and so it gives you a Demonic Core, which is real nice, increasing your intellect for 15 seconds. So that's pretty powerful, and it's on a 1.5 minute cooldown. But Demonology is still in a bad spot, and all the charts and everything shows it. I don't want to get into that in this video. Destruction, Flashpoint, duration increased 10 seconds, and haste bonus increased by 25%. So let's go to Destruction here real quick, and let's check it out. We're going to go to Sims. We're going to go under Azerite and check out to see what if this changed the sim data at all, at least right now. So it's called Flashpoint. Oh, fascinating. So these ones, by the way, I'm scrolling down because these ones are much more up to date. Like you can see where he's simmed it out much more. It's called Flashpoint, huh? Guess what? It's near the bottom. It's the same problem. It's not even close to where it needs to be. Even if it was buffed like massively, it would just, basically what they're doing is they're taking some of these really, really terrible ones that is just god-awful, and then where Thunderous Blast and Laser Matrix are super overpowered. So I'm going to rant a little bit here. You can end the video if you want, but basically Blizzard, there's so many variables in the game. This is a neutral opinion on this idea. I get a problem when stuff like Sudden Onset, it gets buffed and then nerfed. That's where my issue is, because that goes to show you that they didn't test it well enough. They didn't play it enough, or the testing process, the QA process, wasn't good enough. And so Battle for Azeroth feels a little bit like that. Apparently a lot of people were complaining about Battle for Azeroth, how it was one of the most under-tested pieces of content. And I've heard even players like Asmongold say that it's okay, releasing a expansion even if it's buggy is better than no expansion. Because Blizzard has been known in the past to not release content unless it's absolutely perfect. So they have a very high standard of gaming. Like way back in the day, they were actually supposed to, this is when StarCraft was actually really hot and really a great game. They were actually going to release a first-person shooter where you played one of the ghost snipers. And it was like in development for years, awesome, and they never released the game because it wasn't up to Blizzard's standard. But World of Warcraft is the best MMO out there, and the reason why is, partly the reason why is all the freedom that you have. And this is a video I want to make another video to emphasize this a little bit more, but about basically giving characters the freedom to do things, to pick their own path in a game. This is why those survival games and the builder games, where you allow the player ultimate freedom to do what they want to do. And it's difficult to balance a game with so many variables. Okay, there's every class in the game has 3 specs, right? Each one of those specs, at least for warlocks, is very unique, actually. And even for shaman, it's very unique. And I've been playing shaman. So you got a melee shaman, you got a range shaman, you got a healing shaman. And like for druid, it's extremely unique. You got a tank, a healer, and a DPS, a melee DPS. So every class in the game, you know, almost all three specs feels very unique. And then you have, on top of that, you have this Azerite system, which is like the artifact system, which can inherently break classes. So it's hard to play test thousands and thousands of variables, especially when you have very sophisticated players like the ones in Method, or even myself, who are constantly snooping out the meta to figure out what is the most powerful ability. I knew Sudden Onset would get nerfed because I was doing insane damage with Sudden Onset. And this is just like it was in my old PvP video, Melt 'em Like Ice Cream, which was hilarious. Check it out. Link in the description. Where PvP at the time was massively buffed. The change to PvP that needs to be made, as you see certain things are just being tuned here in this particular balance patch for Azerite traits. But the problem is that they have to balance it for two types of gameplays, one for PvP and one for PvE. But the recent Arena World Championship emphasizes like that meta with the tank trinket is super broken. That even non-tanks are running that just because the damage shield is broken, and they buff that too. So that's the problem. Is what they're doing is where the problem usually is when they take something that's decent and they buff it significantly, like Sudden Onset, for example, which was probably just decent, and then they buffed it and it's like, oh, now it's super powerful. Because one other user on the forum suggested that basically if you want to balance out Azerite traits so people don't exploit them and make it kind of just an easy way to balance it, is that if people stack Azerite traits, they don't get the stacking bonus. So you have to be forced to play with different pieces of Azerite gear. So one last major complaint before we tune off the video here. You know, as I'm leveling my alt, you know, one really good suggestion is make the Heart of Azerite a heritage item or an account bound item. So it makes it alt friendly. So people can play, they can just equip that item as a heritage item. Just like when I'm equipping other heritage items or heirloom items. I'm sorry. There's so many freaking names to this game, it's hard to keep track of them all. But in that way, when I'm playing an alt, I can also, when I get Heart of Azerite stuff. And I wanted to make another video for this, but I'll just say here, how that could be fixed is simple. In BDO, they have something called a family system. All your characters, all your alts are they're not individual characters. They're actually part of a family. So whenever one character does something, like reputation, it affects the family of characters. Now you have many servers and things like that. All that, I think, for BDO, even across servers, because the way servers are worked now today, they're not even true servers. They're more like shards. And that's the way at least Blizzard calls them. It calls them cards. It's like everything's sort of instanced. So all your characters across all servers would be a part of a family. So all the rep, everything would be tied together. And the Heart of Azeroth item for BFA could be tied together. So, and that would actually make people play the game more, not less. Because what happens is people are like, they kind of max out their character. And then they're like, man, I want to play an alt, but the grind is so vicious. And they don't want to play all these other awesome, unique classes that this game has to offer. And so the problem is that, and yes, you have the catch-up mechanics of, you know, having a, like every week the Azerite gear gets easier to do. But there's so many people that are frustrated by the grind of it. And like the reputation should all be account bound. It just makes it a lot easier to do things. I don't know why it's separate. It doesn't make any sense. You don't need to make the game that hardcore. And people will play the game more. And like I was trying to make a point earlier, that is because you're going to make the game more freedom for the player. To choose to have them do what they want to do and have them play what they want to play. and give them the option to say, okay, I don't want to play my warlock today, or I don't want to play my warrior. And especially in a game where buffs and nerfs are a daily occurrence, because the game simply hasn't been tested enough. And so the major issue is it takes hours and hours and hours to level up XYZ character to a competitive level. I know, real orc talk here, people. I'm going to sit you down and teach you like a goblin here. So it takes you hours and hours and hours to get to a competitive level as a player, and then you're nerfed. Some trait, Azerite trait, which was keeping you on par with other classes or DPS classes, is nerfed. Then what? You don't have an alt. You don't have a way to play, you know, to get around to see the nerfs. And that's the problem. Is that's what really frustrates people too with these buffs and nerfs, is that you spend a lot of time and gear progression to maybe go and acquire the sudden onset, and then it's suddenly nerfed. That's the frustration part of this game. Now, me personally, I have to keep all my Azerite gear in my bank just for this type of situation. So Inevitable Demise is probably back up there for PvP, but I did read that it did get nerfed. I only have one piece of that particular gear, unfortunately. And Demonology, even in PvP, the damage is horrific, and the sudden onset PvP was basically kept warlocks in par with other classes because of their limited mobility. And I could go into a video why just Enhancement Shaman is just far superior to Affliction Warlocks, just on many, many aspects. It reminds me, I'll wrap up the video, it reminds me way back in Vanilla WoW. I played a mage, then I switched to a warrior. And basically right off the bat I knew warriors were much, much better than mages. Now, granted, this is just on the average, you know, abilities, and at the time, the way warriors played out, just the mechanics of the game, the way it's set for PvP and PvE, unfortunately, that's just the way some things happen. Hopefully I made sense in this video. Hopefully I enlightened you guys a little bit on this information here. Like, subscribe, comment. I'll see you guys in the next video.